Hello and welcome to the Low Tox Life podcast.
So if we go through life if we're not feeling the yucky stuff, usually that means we might not be feeling the good stuff either, right?
We have two very exciting happenings on the show this year. Number one being our 500th show is just a few shows away, and we turn 10 in June. Now, we have been broadcasting audio only across every app wherever you listen to podcasts for all those 10 years. However, we just joined YouTube. So if you didn't know that and you're more of a visual person, please do come and join us on YouTube as well. Welcome back, long-time listeners, new listeners. It's such a thrill to put this show on for you every week. I hope you recognize our very deliberate move away from lots of podcast trends, which is so much sensationalism in the way that things are produced these days. And I simply refuse to do that. Our wonderful 40,000 listeners somewhere in our beautiful world, over 140 countries tuning in, make it possible for me to continue to produce this show with a high standard of ethics as a host who will always ask the qualifying questions that are required to make sure that we unpack ideas fully, to make sure that our guests are not only curious and pioneering, but evidence-based, either through a huge amount of clinical practice, a huge amount of study and research, or a long time on the field when it comes to things like farming and the environment as well. So whatever the low tox topic, you can rest assured that those are the ethics by which we produce shows and will continue to do so. And I thank you for your support. It also means algorithms don't show our show to many people because it's not like, what? What did they say? Oh my God, I'm terrified. Or I need to listen to more, otherwise I'm going to die. Or poison my kids. So every time you do see the show on socials, you know what really helps? Simply hitting like. That's it. Or even popping a comment, oh, can't wait to listen to this one. Those things make a huge difference. So think about that with any independent podcasts you listen to. Now, today's show, I always like to pick a show to start the year that feels like a really nice start to the year, a bit more introspective. And so what, you might ask, is today's first show of the year? It is Dr. Jenn Rapkin, my favorite kind of guest to actually go and find us people who are doing powerful, meaningful work, who I go, hold on, why don't we know about this person's work? This is seminal, powerful, or it's changing lives. And Jenn is changing lives. As a naturopathic physician, she decided very early on to veer away from general practice of naturopathy. She leaned into body work because she saw a lot of people were detached from their emotions, from their feelings. She recognized that early on and committed her work to it. And it's a really powerful show because she gives us these wonderful insights into how it unfolded for her, both as a person, then as a physician, and now through wanting to write a book on the subject, some of the things that she hopes we can reach many more people over. I do hope this helps you. In fact, I credit this show with knowing that I needed to feel feelings around end of year, small business ownership, the horrific shooting at Bondi Beach here in Sydney where I live and where I had been just that morning. And it was like I was too busy to feel. I just kept bottling. And I chatted with Jenn to record this show just before Christmas, and I knew I needed to feel. So what did I do? I put on one of my oldest album favorites, Dave Matthews Band, Crash, and I was doing a long drive and I wailed on the highway. It was so needed. My hope is that in listening to this show to feel more in tune and aligned within ourselves, and this show will definitely help you start the year right on that front. Enjoy. We're going to hear a little word from our wonderful podcast partners that, again, we cannot do a weekly show without them. Here they are. To kick off the 2026 podcast partner offers, we have Oz Climate returning for the whole of 2026. Aussies have 10% off additional to whatever sales they might have with your code LowToxLife as our major podcast partner for the year. I also have 30% off from Edible Beauty, and a wonderful cooking course. Listen up if you want to reduce your food overwhelm in the kitchen and if you want to upgrade your skincare. Hey, Jen, it's great to have you here.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And congrats on getting a book out into the world. I have birthed 2 books, so I very much know what that experience is. Why do you think you had to be the person who wanted to write this book? Because as a naturopathic doctor, there's so many things you help people with. Why did feelings fall into your lap?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to answer the question, I have to just go back a little bit in my life and maybe just introduce myself as a child who was a big feeler of feelings. And I had very loving parents who were also very protective, and they felt strongly that young kids didn't need to be exposed to hard conversations, hard topics, and hard feelings. And so as a result, I didn't have role models for how to both, manage and articulate hard feelings, but also how to share them, even to be exposed to them. And as a result, I came out of my youth and adolescence as a chronic number. I was very detached from my feelings, from my body, and I knew that I needed to do something differently.
And so when you say your parents were well-meaning, they didn't feel like kids should be feeling big feelings, like almost scared of their kid feeling too much, too young.
Yes.
How did that play out in what they told you in those times? Because I think that helps us go, oh gosh, my parents did that too. I didn't realize that, oh, maybe I am disconnected. Because half the time I think we're wandering around thinking, oh no, I cry when there's a sad movie, or I know how to, hug my kid and feel good feelings. Like I'm a feeler. But I think from reading your book at least, there's this layer of lack of awareness of just how much we might be numbing without even realizing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough because I don't have a lot of memories. I don't have memories of witnessing my parents having hard conversations. I don't have memories of witnessing them having confrontation or just dealing with difficult topics, difficult stuff in life. And so as a result, all I remember is having so many strong feelings within me, because even if we want to protect our kids from hard feelings, we can't, right? They're going to have hard feelings no matter what. And I just remember having so much brewing and stirring and spiraling inside of me. And I didn't know that it was okay to talk about it and to express it. We were getting messages all the time, not just from our caregivers, but from the world around us, right? That emotions are a nuisance. They're inconvenient. Just push through it. Grow thicker skin, toughen up, put on a brave face. There's so many phrases and idioms that we use that reinforce that.
Yeah, there are. I remember being a teenager and like you having huge feelings. And I'm so grateful I was a musician because I turned to music as an obvious blueprint for expression, healthy expression. And I found myself, if I look back, being drawn to more philosophical lyricists like your Billy Joels and your John Lennons over the simpler kind of love songs of those times. And I think that music and art can really just be such an incredible soother of recognized feelings, don't you think?
Without a doubt.
Ugh.
Without a doubt. And it's fun that you just brought that up, because in the book, I have a section dedicated to practicing emotion. And that is all about putting yourself in situations where art stirs feelings in us. It mirrors feelings. It creates feelings. It helps explain feelings. And so whatever that creative pursuit or interest that you might have is really worth going toward if you're wanting to feel.
Yeah, big time. And this is definitely not something I counted on saying or talking about today, but it sort of led us to how interesting it is when extremes rise in our world, whether they're a political ideology, a religious ideology. One of their goals is to suppress any kind of variant, any kind of step out of line, any kind of big feeling for or against anything that might not be them. And isn't it interesting that those sorts of people also try to narrow our access to art or access to expressing through art? It always, it's like a whole kind of wave happens, and the undertow is actually this beautiful activism that feeling gives us as well, to actually be completely true to the human experience, whatever that is right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, it's interesting because in the world that we live in today, emotions, even though we're doing a better job, we do talk about feeling and sharing emotions, but there's still this sort of undercurrent of the emotional brain, our emotional self is lesser than our intellectual or cognitive self. Emotions are meant to be managed and regulated. And, you know, there's like a sense of having to control this wild animal within us.
Yeah.
And so if we can touch parts of ourselves, our emotional selves, it broadens and widens our world in such a magnificent way.
And how did that play out for you?
Yeah, so I'm also somebody who has a very busy, worried mind. I have OCD, and so my thoughts have always tended towards intrusive thoughts, worried thoughts, stressed out thoughts, fearful thoughts. And so there have been times in my young life, my adolescence and mid-20s, where I was desperate to know who I was apart from the mental noise, right? Who am I apart from all of these thoughts? And so I needed to find a place. It was almost as if my body was screaming at me and swirling and saying, Jen, pay attention to me. You know, there's so much here. We tend to go to our mind for insight and wisdom and guidance. And there was a time in my life where I had to say, you know what, I need to go somewhere else for that because my mind is driving me, you know, crazy. And it was that conundrum in my life that pushed me to look inward and into my body for answers.
Were you a naturopathic doctor by the time you did start doing this deeper work?
Yes. I started in medical school, but you know, medical school is so busy. And so it was really when I graduated and started a practice of my own where sort of everything kind of hit. Everything felt really heavy because I knew that I was numb and disconnected and I had all this really cool information that I had just learned. And I was struggling to put all the puzzle pieces together. And so it was that, it was my personal search that I think it's common became both my personal and professional life, right? And so the things that were helping me find a deeper connection with myself and a healthier connection with myself were the things that I brought to my practice and brought to the patients coming through my door.
Yeah. It's funny how the people we help end up being our teachers, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And so one of the things that so many people struggle with on their health journeys is the self-care piece and the quiet time and the quietening everything down so you do have time to really lean into what's going on in your internal environment, both physically and mentally. And your importance of learning to feel again, like it's a skill we need to literally teach ourselves in this busy, modern, externalized world that we've found ourselves in. What are some practical steps to know we might even need to go on that journey?
Side of ourselves. But feelings, the idea of sitting with hard feelings or sitting with discomfort is such a abstract, difficult to grasp concept. And so it was one of my goals, actually, or maybe my major goal, was to present feeling emotions in a very real, tangible, discernible way. And I do that through finding a voice for our emotions and a sensation and a feeling in our body, so that it's almost that we can hang our hat on. So if we want to say, if let's say we want to learn to stay with hard feelings, choosing everyday frustrations are it's a good place to start, right? Is a disappointment or a feeling of frustration or maybe failure. I didn't do as well as I would have liked, for this project for my boss, and just allowing that feeling to exist within us. What does that mean? What does it mean to let a feeling exist? What does it mean to let a feeling, to welcome a feeling into our bodies? Almost as if we're shaking the hand of a feeling. So I can tell you when I get nervous, right? Like about to do a podcast, I'll feel, I call it hard bubbles under my sternum. That's my sort of fearful anticipation feeling. I get hard bubbles.
Bubbles.
Yeah, and they're buzzing, right? But what's really cool about that is that it's tangible, it's real. I can talk about it, I can feel it, and you know what? I can stay with those bubbles. I can stay with them, and I can prove to myself that I can actually withstand this, rather than what I might do is avoid the feeling, distract the feeling, numb the feeling, retreat from the feeling,
chocolate,
right?
Instagram.
100%. Chocolate, Instagram, yeah. There are a plethora of ways that we can avoid feelings. And it's big stuff. It's big stuff to do the opposite, which is to say, yeah, I'm just gonna welcome this feeling for a minute. It may sound weird, but why not? Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. So once we see what happens, what do we do with that? Like, what if it is scary?
Yeah. So this is a great point, and I want to be really thoughtful in how I speak about it, because I don't want to feel like I'm being flippant about hard feelings. Hard feelings have become stored and stuffed and a part of our fabric for a reason, right? Oftentimes in our lives, our childhood, we don't know how to sit with really scary, terrifying, traumatic feelings. And so they stay within us. And it's really important to understand that I honor that. The first and foremost is that I honor that feelings exist within us for a reason, and they have actually protected us and served a purpose in our life. And so I don't go willy-nilly into the body work and pry and pull feelings out of people. No way. No way. I work with what comes up in a session, and oftentimes, Alex, the beginning to learn how to feel is actually the awareness that a feeling comes up and we don't want to feel it. And that is such big stuff, right? Because it's an opening. We begin to realize that we have stuff inside that we don't want to feel, but that we also want to honor that. And so feeling work takes time. It takes practice. And in the body work that I do, it takes forming a therapeutic relationship of safety and trust. And my patients knowing that I don't have any agenda or any expectation that they come to some place of revelation or, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You're not going to have this feeling and then, oh my gosh, everything in my life is great now.
Exactly.
Because it's actually more about building the emotional muscle, as that's what I took from your book. It's you're cultivating a new kind of flexibility and strength like you would at the gym.
100%.
And it's honoring, it's feeling, it's going, look, is this my favorite feeling? No.
No.
But is it real and am I having it? Yeah, and I love myself anyway. Like, I think this is so important. Because
important.
culturally, we see the Disney tales, we see the beautiful rom-coms where everything just miraculously works out after maybe a couple of tiny plot twists. You know, everything just seems so lovely as the goal. And actually, the goal is emotional flexibility and resilience for the very real situation of life, which is ups and downs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did a shaman's journey workshop this summer, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, and there was one phrase, I'm going to paraphrase what this one of the shamans said, and it penetrated my soul. He said something along the lines of, life is not meant to be comfortable. Life is not meant to be comfortable. And that's kind of hard sometimes to hear, because even even with all this work that I'm doing, I still like to have the idea that maybe things will, be tied up in a pretty package. But it's not. And for us to be able to say to ourselves, you know what, this feeling feels really yucky. And I don't know if I want to feel it. But you know what? I'm going to give it a minute. I'm going to give it a minute or two, and I'm just going to sit with it and just see what it's like. And like I said, shake its hand or open the door just for a minute or two. We don't have to.
Well, the physiology of a feeling, we know, is about 90 seconds, right?
Yeah, it's a wave. It's a wave. So if we can begin to trust that, one of the cool things that I noticed in my bodywork sessions with patients is that for good feelings, and feelings are really cool, we want to hold on to them. We know that they're fleeting, right? Like a good feeling is fleeting. What's the word? We want to hold on to the feeling. But what we don't always understand is that hard feelings are fleeting too. And so that we don't have to swallow and push and, sit on feelings, because they will also be fleeting. And if we can trust in that, then we might be more apt to welcome it in and ride the wave.
It's so true. I think through your book, I read also earlier this year Unstressable, which was one of Mo Goddat's books. And I really took from that the feeling is going to happen. The best way to do life is to actually let the feeling fully express in that 90-second wave. Then the conscious choice steps in as to whether you cultivate more of that feeling consciously, or whether you actually decide, not a useful feeling. I had it. I experienced it. It wasn't so great, but it's over now. And I'm choosing not to turn that into now a conscious effort of a loop.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Like because turning it into a belief, right?
Right, because it does become a habit. If we consistently turn away from our emotions, that does become a habit, whether it's conscious or unconscious, that we don't go towards our feelings. We go in the opposite direction. So just even, like you said, just even staying with it for a little while gets us in the habit of going towards it. It doesn't mean that we don't always also have to stay with the feeling. I tried in writing the book to be very compassionate about this work. If we stopped and paid attention to every little feeling, for big feelers like, we are, we wouldn't get anything done, right?
We'd be very busy.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd be very unproductive. So I don't want people, I just want it to be the idea that occasionally, here and there, we can practice staying with an emotion. Yeah. And it can also be a good one too, right? Like, why not?
Yeah.
Drink it in. Yeah.
Exactly. Really take the time to stop and smell the roses. And as a Gen Xer, of course, I now want to move into Ferris Bueller quotes, but I won't, because I want to ask you about what you saw in clinical practice that started to make you think, oh God, but we've tried all the herbs and they're exercising now and they're doing all these things that I know from med school I should be having my patients do, and not results yet.
Yeah.
Where did the self-care feeling piece come into starting to see the impact of the work you were doing personally in patients, in actually finally having some of those health roadblocks?
Yeah. Well, I always wanted to be a body worker. So even though I went through the whole training of naturopathic medicine, I always knew I was going to use hands-on work because it's just something that speaks to me. And through beginning to use touch as a therapeutic tool, one of the things that started screaming at me was that there are areas in our bodies that are numb, disconnected, uncomfortable, tense, cold. If we start to pay attention to certain areas in our body, we actually realize that we're pushing things away, or we're holding on to feelings. And it was the body work combined with noticing my patients' struggles with making lasting changes. They'd have, 2 or 3 weeks of really great work, and then and again, I don't want to come off as judgy. I have enormous compassion, but little things of behaviors, mindless behaviors or unhealthy behaviors would peak back in. And it's just almost, it's easier to go down the path of sort of mindlessness than it is to go down the path of intention and mindfulness and bringing presence to our moments. And so it was that realization that said, I want to do this, and I want to look at what is it like to actually be more present with ourselves, be more present with our moment, and be more present with our feelings.
So powerful. And isn't it ironic that it's the mindlessness that actually then prevents us from being able to really healthily establish new patterns?
Yeah, it absolutely. If you think about the ways that and you mentioned it, like when we stop this podcast, you and I will pick up our phones at some point and we will have notifications buzzing and beeping and, all sorts there are so many things that take us away from our moment or our present moment. They need our attention. And there's so many things that we can avoid. We can use distractions, but we can use numbing. We can use retreating to move away from feelings. That was a big one for me. I'm an introvert by nature. And so when I didn't want to feel yucky feelings, I just retreated to my room as a kid or my apartment as a young adult. I retreated from relationships. I retreated from friendships. I retreated from life. So there's so many ways that we can move away from ourselves and from our present moment. And that's where mindfulness and intention, it has to be a choice that we make when we can.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question, Jen, around a line when you've decided, you know what, I really am going to practice feeling big, hard feelings when they come. Mm-hmm. And a line that might need observing around when you actually need professional support to be with you. Maybe there might be trauma involved, or you might actually have a depression diagnosis or an anxiety diagnosis right now, but you're curious about this path. Like, what does that look like for someone who's more vulnerable starting this work?
That's a really important question. When somebody has a history of trauma and abuse, and it doesn't mean that they can't do this work or they can't read the book, but they do need to understand that hard, painful, maybe paralyzing feelings can surface, and really that needs to be accompanied by therapeutic support, by a mental health professional. When I work with somebody with a very complex background, I insist on that person being in therapy. And usually therapists and psychologists are referring to me. So I already have that background, or I have that relationship, and a patient has that support.
You know where they've come from. Yeah.
I know where they've come from. Yeah. And so I talk a lot about that in the book. It doesn't mean that you can't begin to sit with an everyday feeling of frustration or an everyday feeling of, embarrassment or something that that feels really yucky, but may not be as threatening as a deeper feeling, a past feeling, a traumatic feeling. So it's interesting because this particular point that we're talking about derailed me from writing the book for many years, because I didn't want to be irresponsible and I didn't want to throw ideas out into the world willy-nilly. And so it's very important for people to understand that we hold feelings for good reason in our body. I honor that, and that we don't pull them out without having some support, and some good solid support.
So what I'm hearing there is the line to be aware of is when you're digging up versus feeling in your day to day.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if there's some dig up that needs going on, then that's when the professional support is helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt. When you have that kind of professional support, then you have the support from the body perspective, but then you also have somebody who's really going to help you look at that, analyze it, and help you process it.
Yeah, huge. Jen, when we're starting to lean into our feelings more, let's just say I had an anxious, frustrated feeling this morning, actually. I tipped my smoothie right before I was supposed to be on the podcast. There's someone drilling downstairs and everything just felt like too much. And my son was heading out the door asking me about my day's program. And I was like, I don't want any of this. It's just too much. Yeah. I just don't want any of this. Now, I didn't get to live that feeling out because I had to jump on a show and be professional. It was a couple of hours ago. Is it useful if you know you had to get on with it in a moment to actually just come back to it later and go, far out, that was a lot, and actually just acknowledge earlier parts of your day even?
Absolutely. And that is oftentimes done better through narratives and through voicing and sharing that. I do that with my kids. Like if they have something going on and I had to drop them off at school, I'll revisit that later on. But with feelings, I would say, let that feeling go because the time has passed. You felt it, and just have an awareness that the next time you have a feeling, just check in with yourself. Do I have a minute? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. And then see if you can stay. Because like if somebody comes into my office, we never like revisit a feeling. We may talk about a feeling that they had in a previous session, but we always work with what's going on in that moment. So if somebody comes in anxious, that's where we work. If somebody comes in excited, that's where we work. If somebody comes in angry and frustrated, so it's really learning to work with what's in the moment and having an openness and a willingness to be with that. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So but basically what I've just heard is deciding to feel into your feelings when they come up is not a compulsory new assignment. It's actually sometimes you got time, sometimes you don't. But the point is you're aware that when you do have time, it's extremely useful.
Absolutely. And it also can be useful, again, if you even have a second, like this morning, what you were dealing with, even if you just have a second to say to yourself, you know what, I know I'm blowing past this. I don't have time for this. Just even that awareness.
I like that reframe. Because I just said something mean to myself. I said, oh my God, I can't even do two things at once. Like I actually was really unkind to myself. I like that. I'm going to use that tip to now say, now's not the time to get frustrated about this. It happened.
100%. And let it go. And let it go. Yeah. And I promise you that you're going to have another moment like that.
Oh, yeah.
At another day, right? That's life. And you may or may not in that moment have time to stay with it.
Next time, stay with it if you can.
Yeah. If you can.
Yeah. Okay. So in the naturopathic context, obviously you would... or maybe you tell me, are you prescribing herbs and various medications or things? Let's just talk about a midlife woman, for example, where a lot of things are changing. And so there might be a lot of feelings that maybe you haven't felt since puberty because it's so much like a reverse puberty situation, as we know. Can therapeutics be supportive when the feelings tap feels like it's been switched on in permanence and like you're on another emotional hormonal roller coaster?
Absolutely. I've been in practice for many years now, but after the first few years, I moved away from prescribing. I still do a little, but I do more integrated mental health and body work, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't use some of the naturopathic modalities as much as I used to, and as many naturopaths do in a beautiful ways. But I will say that absolutely homeopathy is fantastic for creating an opening in both our physical body as well as our psyche, right? And our energetic body. And it can open us to the potential of different feelings, deeper feelings. Yeah. So I
Oh,
would say, yeah,
interesting.
it's really cool.
And so in homeopathy, what does that look like? Can we pick a type of patient that would come in and what that situation was and how you brought a homeopathic remedy into that patient care?
Sure. So I used in my practice a remedy called Nat Mur, which is a remedy oftentimes used for people that are dealing with some mood issues. And what that does is if you can give somebody just a little bit of mood support, it offers an opportunity for a willingness to shift and look at something differently. I think that's big stuff, right? Because when somebody comes at you and says, I want you to do this, and this, and you're going to need to change this, and that's not so great. I think you should do this. We get a little prickly, right? As we should, right? Where we get defensive because you're asking a lot of me to make changes, to do things differently. So sometimes when we have something energetic like homeopathy that just makes us a little more open and a little less prickly, there's space then to introduce something new, a new idea into our life.
I love that. And I also was thinking as you were saying, oh no, gosh, this is a lot. With this hyper externalized world, we're often kind of reacting to caregivers that don't give us a lot to do and say, you just need to focus on like maybe having a less full day, just taking a couple of things out. It's like, but tell me what I need to do. What do I need to eat? What do I like? I find there's both types of people in this modern day. The people who feel paralyzed if they don't get told a million things to do. And then the other people who feel completely overwhelmed if you tell them even one extra thing to do. And so mood support with that kind of remedy that you mentioned, was it Nat Muir?
Nat Muir. Yeah, it's just it's one of many, and I hesitate to even mention any remedy because it's not really. I'm not here to give any kind of advice, medical advice, homeopathic advice, but I'm just giving an example of some remedy that I might
Oh,
use
absolutely.
with
Yeah.
somebody. Yeah, but yes, I mean. What's really cool about homeopathy is that it works on an energetic level as opposed to sort of a physical biochemical level. And so it allows for change to happen authentically or in a spontaneous way. Yeah, but you're right. People can come from either direction, right? They want answers. And it's really interesting in the work that I do is sometimes I have to say, I work from a more process oriented place. And while of course I want the same goals and I want wellness and health in a patient's life, there is a process that we go through to become more open and to be able to tolerate feelings and change and messiness. And that doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen with a pill.
No. Oh my gosh, no. And for me it almost feels like the lesson there is like if you don't have time to feel, then that's like literally the medicine. That's the big red flag right there, is
Yeah.
that it's therefore the most important thing to focus on.
Yeah. Yeah. It is because if we just go through life pushing away, the opposite of feeling is not feeling, right? So if we go through life not feeling, if we're not feeling the yucky stuff, usually that means we might not be feeling the good stuff either, right? Right?
Yeah.
And so part of feeling is feeling all the wonder and the awe and the love and the gratitude within us and around us. And what comes with that is feeling the hard stuff too.
Yeah. Was there a chapter in your book that you found really tricky? Did you get stuck somewhere?
Well, I got stuck. We've already talked about one place that I got stuck, and that was the trauma, because it was really important for me to be able to articulate the safety and the honoring of feelings, right? Like I took a lot of time and an enormous amount of thoughtfulness around writing that. But I think an area where I got stuck is talking about the mind, right? Because I don't want to come off as being really negative about being in our heads, right? I talk a lot about living in our bodies instead of our heads, and introducing ourselves to our physical body as opposed to the thinking mind. And I don't want to come off as being judgy and shaking my finger about being in your head. I don't, because that's part of our life. I mean, that's where we spend most of our time.
Yeah.
So that was also a tricky part for me to write, because I want people to be introduced to body-centered concepts, but I don't want them to feel like I'm like I'm being critical of the times that we spend in our thoughts.
And Jen, what would it feel like can you step us through something we could all start to do, whether we could use our hands to notice where feelings are being felt in the body and what that might mean? I think having some practical ideas of what it looks like to start this journey, if you feel, oh my gosh, I've been pushing everything down, I've been in survival mode, I've been trying to get the kids raised, I've been trying to look after the elderly parents, my career, my husband's having work stress. It's the modern, especially it seems, sandwiched midlife woman is dealing with a lot. And so it might feel like she needs some help. Okay, so what does this look like? What should I even do to feel more?
Probably one of my favorite exercises in the book is called the 50-50 exercise.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about this as an introduction to body-centered work, because what it means is that can you, in any given moment and in any given activity, so that whether you're brushing your teeth or you're writing an email or maybe you're doing the dishes or folding the laundry, can you put 50% of your attention on that activity and then 50% of your attention somewhere in your body? And that can be anywhere you decide. It could be your feet, feeling your feet while you're brushing your teeth. It could be just checking in with the tension in your jaw while you're writing an email. Maybe it's feeling if anything's brewing in your chest while you're talking to a friend on the phone. It's such big stuff, because what it is saying to us is that not only can we be engaged and present with our work and our friends and the people in our lives and the things that are important to us, but we can also be present with ourselves. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We don't have to step out of ourselves when we're living our life. We can actually stay within ourselves while we're living our life. And that is big, big, big stuff. And I will say it's harder than it sounds, right?
Yeah.
I don't want people to think that that's easy. And if you try it and you're like, oh my gosh, it's totally normal. It's hard, but it is so worthwhile. It is so worthwhile.
It's so powerful, because it lets you realize that real life is just having, one foot in your own camp and one foot in your external camp, and not completely ignoring yourself for the sake of everything else around you, like so many women definitely do.
And think about it. I mean, and also like when I'm stressed out and something's going on with my kids, and I can spiral completely out of myself, right? Like, and everything is put on what's going on outside my world. So when we're doing simple tasks and activities, it's a great place to practice, because you don't want to practice this when something really emotional and difficult is going on in your life. You want to practice this when you're brushing your teeth, right? Or you're watering your plants, or you're taking a walk.
That's your training wheels kind of ground, your day-to-day stuff. Yeah. I think it's, I've had all sorts of people on the show, but that kind of practice brings in so many different guests' themes, like, standing on one foot while you're brushing your teeth. And then you're actually building balance. And then with your work, you're building body awareness as well. So these things are helpful on multiple layers, not just for your balance or for your feeling or for proprioception, whatever you want to call it. It all actually happens when you start to include yourself in your everyday.
Yeah.
And it sounds so crazy, doesn't it? What do you mean I'm not including myself in my everyday? I'm there, but we're kind of not. We're out there, not
we're kind of not
here, like, there.
I'm always really fascinated by the fact that this is something that we don't talk about. It's something that we don't learn about as kids. We don't have it in schools. I mean, I don't want to speak for the schools, in Australia. I don't, but in the States, we're doing better for the emotional health and resilience of kids is part of the conversation, but we don't talk about being present in our bodies. And it's just fascinating to me that we grow up not really knowing that that's a thing.
I know. And then when you do see it in schools, it like goes viral. It's so fabulous and shocking that like the school who implemented meditation instead of detention improved test scores, or kindness in the playground. It's like, yeah, of course it did, because mindfulness means you're more conscious, and when you're more conscious, as if conscious beings feel like they need to impulsively lash out and do mean, evil things. Now, I want to talk about kids a bit more, because this is where a lot of this goes south and we end up shutting ourselves off. So little boys get told, like, chin up, like, you're tough. Boys don't cry. And this is still happening today, maybe to a lesser extent in some cultures, but in many cultures, it's still happening. It's almost like we're scared if our boys don't grow up tough still. And so I want to spend a little time there, because we see how that plays out for men, then not knowing how to be wonderfully masculine and themselves, and including in that feelings.
Yeah. So I present an idea in the book. It's just a fantasy idea, right? And that fantasy idea is that we have an emotions class in our elementary schools where we learn how to sit with emotions, to ride the waves of emotions, to cheer on our friends when they are, feeling a hard feeling and they've made it through, for girls, and like you're saying, especially for boys, it's just so important for us to get the message that emotions are not a nuisance and they're not an inconvenience. If you think about a little person's life, right? And what might be taken as just part of a little person's life, which is a fear of being dropped off at school, or maybe a need for a hug before bed, right? Like these things taken at face value, they're part of just growing up. But when we deal with these things with having a boss breathing down our necks, we need gas, we're running late for work, we've got a call, we have a meeting, there's just no time. There's just no time for it. And these small times of kids needing to feel and express their feeling and let people know what's going on within them gets pushed aside.
Yeah.
And right. And so it's almost, and again, I am not shaking my finger and saying, parents, you're not doing a great job. I'm not. All I'm saying is that if we can, in small moments where we have a second, to just stop and, let our kids have their feelings and validate them and just say, yeah, that feels yucky and I get it. And that, oh yeah. And just let them express when we can, create a space for that to happen is, again, just big stuff.
Instead of trying to move us on or tell us that it's no big deal or all of those things that we normally do as some kind of probably personally intergenerationally traumatized response.
Right. And because of that, though, we're also going to learn that feelings are okay. Feelings can come up. And when we stuff and swallow and sit on feelings, we create the potential for those feelings to come out at the people that we love, right? And that's not taking responsibility for our feelings.
It's
right?
not.
So, it's not. So really, what is taking responsibility for our feelings is really feeling the feelings, liberating the feeling, and letting it go. And not letting it hold us hostage, and not letting it hold the people around us that we love hostage.
Yeah, absolutely, Jen. As we were talking about, as I was sort of saying the boys' scenarios, I'm now thinking about the girl version of the scenarios, and it's often, whereas all of those things that we tell little boys are about toughness, all the things we tell little girls are about compliance. Be quiet, minimize. Oh, no, you can't say that.
Yeah.
That's
Make
not
yourself
polite.
smaller.
That's, right. And it's no wonder how this is playing out, because we're still saying these sorts of things to our kids, which means it's still coming up. And that little elementary wish list idea, it should be, if we had a Department of Peace, then we would probably have things like that start to come in. We know in Finland, the kids have empathy class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, put yourself in other people's shoes before you go judging. Thank you very much. Imagine if
Isn't
more
that
kids
wonderful?
around the world grew up that way, going, God, yeah, that must be tough. Or, oh, wow, like I might not have won this race, but look at her joy. That I can still feel happy for her because she did, and she really made a big effort. So, that for me is this invitation that you give us with this book is very much so let's look at doing that for ourselves, but then looking beyond ourselves and how we can encourage more feeling in others.
Yeah. And I think for modeling, like I said, I didn't really have that modeling as a child. And for me, with my kids, I also like to be able to say when I make a mistake, like if something comes out and I spew it out at my kids, which I hate to do, and it's awful, but it happens. To be able to say,
thank you for saying that it happens, because I'm sure parents are thinking,
oh
I can't have outbursts. That's bad feelings.
It totally happens. But just to be able to model and be like, I'm sorry that I threw that at you. That's not really fair. But it happens. I'm sorry. And, I want to do better. But sometimes, mom's not perfect. Not even close. Not even close.
Yeah.
But I will say to my kids, if you don't want to feel your feelings, why would somebody else want to feel those feelings? Right. So when instead of feeling our own feelings, throwing them out of our, that's not fair, because if we don't want to feel them, why would anybody else want to?
And that really is your outburst, is giving your uncomfortable feelings to someone else to deal with.
Somebody else. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm saying, like, I do it. And if, and I try when I can to own it. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And, I like, oh gosh, I just threw that out at you guys. That's my stuff. Those are my feelings. I didn't want to feel them.
Oh, 100%. The accountability piece
Mm-hmm.
is so important and that's important for our kids to learn accountability around feelings and outbursts as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because we think about it online, we can throw our feelings out online, right? And we don't have to use our names. We don't have to, it plays out in so many areas
Yeah.
in our life. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the anonymity piece now with the
Mm-hmm.
keyboard warrior
Yeah.
situation. Oh, wow. What a beautiful conversation, Jen. And I know your book is much more practically stepped out than this exploratory conversation we've had. So, one last question I want to ask you is if you could issue us all a bit of a gentle challenge around
Mm-hmm.
feelings this week that you know from all the body work you've done with patients and yourself will really make a difference, what do you think
Mm-hmm.
that would be? What would it look like for us all to toddle off and do instead of picking up our phones and jumping on Instagram right now?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two things that I'd like to say, and one of them is that it's sort of in a lasting kind of wish or something to share at the end is just for people to really believe and trust that they can do hard things and stay with hard feelings. Like we really can do that.
Yeah.
And to trust that we do have the capability to stay with hard feelings. And then the sort of more practical piece that I'd love to end with is just to give yourself permission to invite a feeling, whatever that might be, to invite a feeling in and to just try to give it, to find its shape, to find its location, to find its intensity in your body. Those that may sound weird, but that's okay. Things can be weird, right? Things can be new. But just inviting you to find a physical reality for your feelings, to find something tangible within you, and to give you permission to just feel it and maybe name it and see it and talk about it. Yeah.
And so, what if I'm scared of something and I invite that feeling of fear back in because I've been pushing it away and now
Mm-hmm.
I want to spend like my time with it? And my right shoulder like
Mm-hmm.
is what is revealed, let's just say. I'm like, God, like I can really feel a tension there when I'm calling this feeling in to spend time with it. What do we do with it then? I
Yeah.
feel like I'm opening a new can of worms right on our conclusion, but
No, that's okay. It's a great question. And and I would say to you that the answer to that question really lies within you. Like what are you I can't necessarily tell you exactly what to do with that feeling other than to give it space and invite it to just show itself to you and for you to pay attention to it, right? So it's just the idea of paying attention to some part of yourself, to some feeling, and let something be revealed to you. So remember, I don't know if I talked about it, that we go up to our mind for insight. Go into your body for some insight, whatever that means to you, and see if something is revealed. And it's not going to be like some crazy, epiphany, right? That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that a feeling might reveal itself, and there might be a kindness or a compassionate approach for you just to accept it and to just stay with it. It's
what a beautiful
okay.
way to start our new year.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen. It was so great to meet you. I wish you all the best with your book. It was great to have this chat.
And I'm just so grateful and honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in listening to this week's show. If you're not already subscribed or following the show on whatever platform you listened, please do that now. It helps enormously in terms of getting this show out to more people. Another way you can connect and support the work we do so that we can support you in your low tox life is join us in the Low Tox Club. You'll get access to amazing member masterclasses where we invite some of our best show guests for a live Q&A with members. You also have great shopping discounts from low tox businesses and honestly the nicest low tox community Facebook group that exists on the internet. I do hope you join us there. It costs just the price of a coffee a month on average. Head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the Explore tab, and Low Tox Club is the first option there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.